Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So we're talking about Tesla stock, and believe me, I really get it. If you turn to other channels who are Tesla cheerleaders, they're just going to tell you Tesla's going to go to the moon all day, every day. And then when you see the performance of the stock, then you feel like, oh, it's all manipulated because, other channels tell you it's going to go to the moon. So I want to give you some real information that's hopefully helpful and useful for you and help you understand what's going on in the market. Also, too, if you're new here, my name is Chris, a professor for about 10 years, and this is help you grow your account and grow your mind. So let's start with this. I'm just waking up today. I can see Tesla was down yesterday, and it's down in the pre-market at 673. It's probably heading towards 600, but we'll see. I'm looking at this as well. This is an interesting thing that came out yesterday. This was a recruiter for Tesla, so he was hired a couple months ago, and he was supposed to work remote. He told them, hey, I'm going to work remote. And so it was interesting because I remember there was back in the, I think it might have been a month ago or something like that, where Elon said, hey, everyone, come into the office or we're going to fire you. And it's funny because now looking sort of this person's story and, compare it to what Elon was saying, I think Elon knew perfectly well that a lot of these workers are remote. Because Quishon is his name here. He was saying that when he was hired, he was told this is a remote job, you're going to be remote. And so he kind of planned on that. And he sort of was, what's the right word to say, off-put when Elon's like, hey, y'all have to come into the office. Even though when he was hired, he was promised it would be remote. The other thing, too, I think is really interesting about the story is he was saying that they were, recruiting and out on like recruiting trips and stuff like that, collecting candidates. When Tesla announced a hiring freeze, this was sort of like, not publicly announced, but internally, and then ultimately he was fired, Quishon, and basically they just turn off your email, so he was unable to contact any colleagues or anything of that nature. So he feels obviously hurt by the situation. I'm sure you guys can understand if you're just hired it. And he said for him Tesla was a dream job, but you're hired by this company, it's a dream job. You work for 2 months and then they basically fire you. So that's kind of a bummer. I just wanted to share that because I think, sometimes people get all caught up in, Elon is God kind of stuff and don't realize there's people that work for him. And, when you read different things in disgruntled employees, this gives you their perspective on that. And for anyone who's ever had a job or a boss, I'm sure you guys understand. One of the things that too, he posts on LinkedIn, that he's looking for a job, etc. And I think you're going to see a lot of these kind of stories going forward as we go into recession. And it's one of the things that I think is important to note as well is, Elon gets a lot of money. So you can see here, like he's collecting a bonus of 23 billion while workers are losing money or losing jobs, I should say. This is something that was interesting. There was a report I read just a couple of days ago where it was saying in the 1950s, CEOs used to make like a 20-to-1 kind of ratio compared to workers. At the moment, it's more like 300, 400 times more than what the average worker makes. Now, there are different arguments you could make for that. You could just say CEOs are more important these days, or CEOs have a lot more responsibility than they did, say that would have been 70 years ago compared to 1950. But there still definitely is a pay disparity between, CEOs and your regular workers. The other thing, too, that came out, there's a lot of stuff. There's always stuff on this stuff, right? That the vehicle quality of the EVs may not be so good. Now, this is put out by J.D. Power, and to be fair, I don't know if I would put much credence on this particular ranking thing. The reason why I was looking at it is that they're saying like your Buick, your Dodge, and your Chevy are your best cars according to the quality, and I would never say that about Buick, Dodge, or Chevy. This is my opinion and sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say opinion, but just my understanding of cars. The Japanese and the Korean cars are pretty good. Japanese are most reliable in terms of what I've seen throughout my life. I'm pushing 50, and one of the things is like Ford, for example, is on this list. Even quit making cars. They mostly just focus on trucks these days. I don't think they really make cars that much. I remember they announced that they cut out a whole bunch of models, etc. And a lot of these vehicles, like I don't think the BMW is necessarily known for reliability. It's known to be a good driving car, like it's the ultimate driving machine, etc. So I don't know. It just makes me question this when Buick's at the top and Tesla and Polestar at the bottom, right? you guys can see it for yourself. So I'd be curious your guys' opinion on this kind of stuff. And everyone has, it's kind of funny, everyone has sort of biases on car brands. But at the end of the day, right, you know how well your car performs and you know how many miles you get out of that thing. One thing I will say though, with this particular chart, which I think is interesting, is that you're counting problems equally. So why would this matter? Because, you know, when you look at, let's say Tesla has, say, 300 problems or whatever, right? Or no, actually 200 problems, and Polestar has 300 problems. A lot of these problems could be software issues. And one of my understandings of these kind of newer vehicles, this is the Tesla 300 different problems, is they treat it like video games where they put out software that is not quite ready, and then they'll send updates, you know, basically you just download the updates like you would a video game, right? So that is a thing with these kind of vehicles. And then you could argue that, you know, the Buick is made for old people and they don't have any software at all, right? However, you can't necessarily treat all problems the same, especially with cars, right? So for example, the Fords are notorious for poor transmissions. There was an issue recently where, like, you put the car in park, or you think it's in park because that's what your indicator shows you, and you get out of your car, and then in fact the transmission's broken and the car's actually in neutral, and your car will just roll away. So that is a thing. So I don't know if there's any like really serious issues with Tesla, other than I was looking at some reported things of the Model 3. It's like paint issues, water problems. But you know, you guys, it depends who's, you know, everyone has their own biases on whatever cars, but at the end of the day, right, there is facts. Like, some cars have problems with certain things and some don't. For example, you know, I had a Volkswagen when I was in high school, and it's kind of funny. People always make jokes that all you need is a little bit of duct tape and wood, and you can fix your Volkswagen. It was a joke, but the idea was that you could actually work on those cars. And these days, you know, cars you can't really work on anymore. And also, to be fair, most of the newer cars these days are way more reliable than they were in the past. So for those of you who are younger and never had to work in your car constantly, that is a thing that used to be with the older cars. They just weren't as reliable as the ones are today. So even though there may be problems with the Model 3, it's still better than you know, cars of yesteryear, I guess you should say. The other thing too, which I want to go over with you guys, is sort of estimates for the next earnings report. I believe it's early July, so actually we're already June 30th, so it's coming up soon. It's interesting because many of the analysts are sort of downplaying or downgrading the amount of deliveries that are going to come out, and I think a lot of people are expecting that. So oftentimes, if you understand earnings reports, is the price of the stock is sort of pricing in what they think the company's going to do in the future, right? So everyone's kind of, you know, expecting lower deliveries, and I think you guys probably know this, right? The Shanghai factory was shut down. So what kind of deliveries are we thinking of here? So it's all over the map. Some people are saying, okay, it could be as low as 232,000 vehicles, right, delivered. And then I guess the high end would be 344,000. So you're looking at 100,000 delivery difference in estimating what Tesla's going to do. And you know, you guys know this, that for a company stock to be worth something, you have to be selling cars, essentially, in this case. And if you're not selling cars, you're not bringing in money. So we'll see where this comes out. A lot of the newer estimates are more to the lower range. In fact, if you take a look at the recent price cuts, this is Citigroup. They're saying 45% downside, which would be a 375 target. However, three days ago, Deutsche Bank is like, no, this is $1,000. So you have a wide disparity among Wall Street, and it all depends on earnings. So I would say take all of these with a grain of salt. I wouldn't necessarily say one person's right over the other, because I'm telling you, no one knows unless you have inside information of what Tesla deliveries are going to be. But do be prepared that you could have a lot of volatility depending on what those numbers come in at. Also, too, that latest estimate was saying he's thinking the second quarter earnings will be $1.91 a share. Now, if you take a look at this, and this is why I mentioned where people sometimes, if they don't understand the market, they think everything's manipulated. It has to do with earnings, right? So here, for example, these are different estimates. So say before, we're thinking that June 2022 is going to be $1.91. that's sort of maybe a consensus, but the variation could be high, right? So some people say it could be $1 earnings, or it could be $3 earnings. This is per share. If you take a look at though their sort of history, Tesla tends to beat estimates, right? However, right now, quarter two estimate says $1.96. You can see it right here, right? However, if estimates are low and you beat it, it doesn't necessarily mean a great earnings compared to, to move the stock, right? So sometimes people get confused in this stuff. They say, oh, well, they beat on earnings. Why isn't the stock going up? Well, there's a couple of reasons why it would be. Well, one is the estimates were already a low bar. And then two, forward guidance, meaning like what does the company say they're going to do for the rest of the year. So those couple of things really matter. And I don't know what Tesla's going to say. I don't know. What I do know is I can read numbers, and I always tell you guys that this stuff's important, is the valuations. And so I still see a forward PE of now it's at 66, and then a PEG of 1.32. Usually your PEG, this is basically factors in growth. You want to be under 1 if you can, which would be a decent value of a stock. And then your PE, you want essentially be lower than your growth. So for example, in this case, if we have a forward P of 66, then that means we want Tesla's growth to be like 85% or 70%, something like that. I would imagine Tesla's growth is you're probably looking at maybe 30 or 40%. And that's sort of based on just, different estimates. Actually, what is it here? Yeah. So, it depends. This isn't revenue growth. It depends what you want to look at, right? Some of these numbers are really massive. But you gotta like take it with a grain of salt and put all these things together and what seems reasonable. Because if I'm looking at also estimates of growth, there's different ways you can look at it. You can look at just pure revenue. You can look at, are they cutting margins? You can look at, are their expenses going up, etc. And you can see here, I mean, some of these estimates year over year, you have a range of like as low as, this is, depending on quarter, as low as 16 and as high as like 100, right? You got these different, growth estimates here for earnings. So this is where I think you want to think of, like, in my opinion, what seems reasonable. I think 30 to 40% growth is reasonable, but that's even relatively high. I mean, if you think about, and when people say, oh, Chris, you're just being bearish and stuff like that. I mean, still 30% growth for a company is very good. It's just that people have this kind of crazy high expectations for something like this, and we're going into a recession. So the question you have to ask yourself: are people going to be buying cars? And the other issue is, if things are so rosy for Tesla's future, why are they firing a lot of people? So these are the kind of the questions that you want to ask yourself. So, we'll see going forward. I was saddened to hear about this person's story about getting laid off. And I just want you to always remember that when you're buying stocks, it's not just charts on the screen or digital things. It's you're actually buying ownership in a company, and these are real people's jobs and real products that they're putting out there. So I do appreciate you guys' time. You can check out my other videos on Tesla where we talk about FSD, robotaxis, and that kind of thing as well, which you might find interesting. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll catch you in the next video.